for me, and I'll set you free.
Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. Come together right now over me.
Hey there, it's Lars Larson. Right now, you're listening to Nevada Matters.
Thank you for that, Lars Larson. Also heard on a competitive Fox News radio station up here in the great state of Nevada. Right now, you are listening to us on 1180 AM KCKQ throughout all of northern Nevada and all of Lake Tahoe and Truckee, all the way to Doyle and Portola, one of the largest signals terrestrially we have ever been on. We're also heard around the world on our internet radio station, which is americamatters.us. Tell your family members, friends, and associates to simply go to americamatters.us, click on the Listen Live button. If they miss any portion of this very special Nevada Matters, they also get to pick it up tomorrow morning at 4:30 a.m. on the Pacific Coast and 7:30 a.m. on the East Coast of our great United States, and it's also heard at various times around the world. Why do we have a special Nevada Matters once or twice a week? Because from time to time, I will select people who have truly made an impact on the great state of Nevada or the United States as a whole. Now, let me give you a brief introduction. This gentleman who I'm about to introduce, his name is Omer Raines. He was elected to the California Senate as a Democrat in 1974. Raines served 3 terms prior to running the office of the Attorney General of California. His Senate district included over 1 million constituents in the, if you will, Central Coast area of California between Los Angeles and San Francisco, including but not limited to the counties of Ventura and Santa Barbara. Raines served as chairman of the Senate Majority Caucus, the youngest in state history, as chairman of the Senate Committee on Political Reform, and as chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. At the time, Raines also was serving in numerous other legislative positions. Without further ado, I would like to now introduce you to our very special guest, Omer Raines. Welcome to Nevada Matters, my friend.
Thank you, Eddie, and hello to you and to those listening.
Oh, well, you better believe. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at the big map right here on the wall right now. We have 4 countries with a new record of listenership. We have Spain, we have England, we have Greece, and we also have Croatia. 4 records in the way of listenership, and we also have 19, I counted them just a moment ago, 19 new records when it comes to listeners in states here, coast to coast and border to border. Now, Omer, if you don't mind, if I may call you Omer just for the show, Omer Raines is our very special guest, and I've had the honor of reading your book, Back to the Summit, and it is now an international bestseller and being translated into other language. It is truly, and I mean this, listeners, truly inspirational. But I've got to ask you, what inspired you to write it, Omer?
Well, I've had a rather adventurous and difficult life with very high peaks, but also very low valleys. And for years, I've been advised that this ought to be written, and ghostwriters and authors kept coming forward, and I kept saying, no, if ever it's written, I must do it, because I think I'm the only person that can really chronicle this story. But be that as it may, in 2002, I unexpectedly suffered the greatest challenge I had ever suffered, a ruptured brain aneurysm and stroke.
Wow.
That should have killed me on the spot, or left me at best in a vegetative state. And after making a recovery that continues to defy medical explanation, as told in Back to the Summit, I knew that I had to do it before the unexpected happened again.
Yes.
So that was the inspiration for writing what I hope to be an inspirational book.
And I want to thank you because I did read the medical background on your aneurysm and your stroke. Here's the question that I have next, and it was passed up from a young lady in the front row here at the audience at the Reno Town Mall. How did you come to walk again and do everything else that you now do, in many cases even more than you did before being struck down with this aneurysm and stroke?
Well, of course, that's what the book is all about. The steps toward recovery accompanied by flashbacks and flash forwards, chronicling one challenge after another that I did have to overcome during my life, and how my life experiences might have enabled me to overcome what the doctor said would not be possible.
Wow.
The ability to communicate, the ability to recollect, and most of all, the ability to walk and again lead an active and meaningful life.
Unbelievable. Now, Omer Raines, I'm going to ask you to do this for us, even though I know the answer. Our listeners all around the world do not know the answer, and that is, where were you born and where were you educated? Because I know you left home at a very, very early age. So tell us a little bit about that and your move eventually to California.
I was born in 1941. FDR was president. It was before we entered World War II, in the Missouri Ozarks, in a farm environment. And as a result, that is where I lived the first 11 years of my life. The war broke out shortly after my birth. My father had wartime responsibilities, was away for about 5 to 6 years. And as a result, we were living with my maternal grandparents in this small farming setting, without electricity, without running water, obviously without radio, TV, telephone, or anything else that people might otherwise take for granted.
Right.
So, you know, but it was the world I knew, and everyone around me lived that same life. And at age 11, my parents came to California. They actually had lived here before I was born, because my father was a professional baseball player and had come west to play for the San Francisco Seals of the Pacific Coast League.
Wow.
This was long before the Giants moved from New York to San Francisco and the Dodgers from Brooklyn to L.A.
Right.
And then in 41, he was signed by the St. Louis Cardinals, part of the old Gas House gang. But right as he appeared and right as he started practicing, the war broke out. And that was because when he came back, basically his baseball career was over. But my parents always dreamed of coming back to California, where the streets are paved with gold, because they were in San Francisco when the Golden Gate Bridge was open, when the World's Fair was held, and Treasure Island was built, and, you know, all these wonderful, marvelous things that occurred during that period. And that's what they dreamed of. But we didn't end up in San Francisco.
No, as a matter of fact, you didn't. And like Dr. Forsyth, James Forsyth, integrative oncologist who just left the studio right now, I am totally amazed, and so was he, that you managed to put yourself through 7 years of undergraduate and graduate work at the University of California, Berkeley, his alma mater. And, you know, how did you do that without any parental help or governmental assistance?
Well, the fact is, Eddie, that from age 11 on, there was never a time when I wasn't working, generally multiple jobs at a time. Don't get me wrong. I don't recommend that as a way to grow up.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you surely come to value the importance of hard work and overcoming challenges. In my case, it probably had a lot to do with having the tenacity, willpower, and determination ultimately to overcome this great challenge, the aneurysm and stroke. But I was in Bakersfield at the time, and upon completing high school there, I did go to the University of California, Berkeley.
Wow.
But
wow.
As the book sets forth, I'm not real proud of my high school years. They were pretty wild.
They were pretty wild. I think a lot of us could admit to that.
Yeah.
Now, listeners.
And from age 15 on, I was living on my own, so I was having to make money to pay rent.
Well, we have a lot in common. That was the age when I left home as well and ran a sport fishing boat to put myself through University of Florida. Listeners, we are talking to the most interesting man I have interviewed in years and years, Omer Raines. We're going to take a short break. We invite you to come get behind a microphone here at the Reno Town Mall or join the audience. There are still 2 seats available in the audience. You can text our chief engineer 775-237-2266 or give Omer Raines or yours truly a call at 844-790-TALK. Again, 844-790-8255.
Northern Nevada's Building and Construction Trade Council is working for a better community for all of us.
We've been partners with local contractors since 1928 to provide qualified, safe, and productive workers. Workers trained in the latest technologies and methods to perform the highest standards of quality and efficiency.
We save taxpayers money by assuring union workers and their families have medical insurance and pension benefits, so they won't need public assistance. We also work to keep unqualified contractors with their shoddy work practices from building our bridges, schools, and public buildings.
Our Building and Construction Trades Council supports good jobs in our community. Jobs with a livable wage, basic health and retirement benefits, a safe work environment, and the pride that comes from knowing we are building a better Northern Nevada.
For more information about our local Building and Construction Trades Council, go to bctnn.org. That's bctnn.org. Or call 775-355-9200.
Support the quality contractors who employ skilled union tradesmen. We build it right the first time.
Do you have a friend, a family member, or an associate who is suffering from cancer? I mean, any form of cancer. Let me tell you about some national statistics. If you have that friend, family member, or associate who has been diagnosed with stage 4 or beyond cancer, they have a 1.5 to 2% chance of living beyond 5 years unless they go to Dr. James Forsyth at Century Wellness Clinic located in Northern Nevada at 521 Hamel Lane. I'm going to give you a phone number. I want you to call them. Their number is 775-827-0707. The statistics on their ongoing study show about a 71 to 72% chance. So give them a call right now. Tell your family member, friend, or associate 775-827-0707.
Have a great idea for a t-shirt? Always wanted that funny thing you say on a handbag? At Big Frog Custom T-Shirts and more, your idea comes to life in vivid full color on virtually any garment. Sit down with a designer and watch your idea become digital reality and then stretchable, breathable, printed reality on the garment of your choice. Big Frog Custom T-Shirts and more never charges design fees, nor setup fees, and no minimums. Whether you want 1 or 100 custom T-shirts, Big Frog can help, starting at just $15.99 each. Big Frog is not a screen printer. Our direct-to-garment technology changes the color of the shirt instead of printing on top, so there's no plastic layer of uncomfortable ink. Big Frog Custom T-Shirts and more. 5057 South McCarran Boulevard next to Trader Joe's, or call 775-409-4000. 775-409-4000. Big Frog Custom T-Shirts and more. Find Big Frog Reno on Facebook or visit bigfrog.com/Reno.
All right, we are back now with, without a doubt, one of the most interesting interviews I have ever done. It's with Omer Raines. He lives up there at God's Gift to the World, Lake Tahoe area right now. And the next question I have for you, Omer, is when you got out of college, it seems that you kept up the extremely fast pace, especially with your involvement in multiple forms of public service, so much that at age, now listen to this, listeners, at age 29, you were recognized as the outstanding citizen of Ventura, California, and at age 32, you were elected to the California Senate representing over 1.5 million people, and 2 years thereafter, you were one of the key people in a presidential campaign. Hey, that's incredible. That's totally incredible, Omer.
Well, I suppose so when I think back upon it. But being a confirmed workaholic at the time, and I still am, I really didn't know any other way of life. And I was involved in, at one point in time, 15 different state, regional, and local commissions or agencies, chairing 12 of them. But being a member of what came to be called the Beat Generation, the generation that preceded the baby boomers, I grew up considering public service the greatest calling of all.
Wow.
And my involvement in community activities and public service just seemed to come naturally.
Well, naturally, it did come. Now, I have a question for you because, when you first got involved, one of my favorite presidents that ever reigned as president of these United States was Ronald Reagan. And when you first got involved, I believe he was still governor of California when you first were elected, wasn't he?
He was indeed. It was in his second and last term as governor of California. And I worked closely with Reagan. We had standing jokes between us because when he eventually becomes president, his Western White House is in my district up in the Santa Ynez Mountains.
Right.
And, of course, the public National Library, Reagan National Library now, is over in Simi Valley, which was also part of my district. So my district was 5,000 square miles in size, and
wow.
I would say over 1.5 million people. Population at that time was substantially larger than the entire state of Nevada, way larger.
Wow.
That has changed because of the explosive growth of Clark County.
Yeah, I have a dear friend of mine, Ty Cobb, who handled his relations with the Soviet Union at the time, and Ty comes on our set all of the time. I can't wait, Omer Raines, for you to meet him. Now, I have another question for you. What about Jimmy Carter? Okay, you were his and the Western States co-chair as early as 1976 when he defeated Gerald Ford. You were thereafter a frequent visitor to the White House, flew with the president on Air Force One on many occasions, and were present for the signing of the Camp David Accords. You must have gotten to know him pretty dadgum well.
I did, and I do. Thank God he is still with us. Carter was probably the most intelligent and best-bred president in modern U.S. history.
Wow.
But Carter inherited a mess. What with the country still traumatized by Vietnam and Watergate, with an inflationary spiral resulting in large measure by the OPEC oil embargo, which I'm sure you remember.
Oh, sure.
With the taking of American hostages into Iran and so on and so forth. Nevertheless, there were some remarkable achievements during his presidency, in my opinion, he simply hasn't been given sufficient credit.
Right.
I mean, he did, his administration brokered the peace, as you mentioned, between Egypt and Israel, which has lasted over 30 years to this day. The SALT II arms control treaty with the Soviet Union was signed. He was the one who normalized relations with China. Nixon had first gone to China, opening the door, but it was under Carter that we had normalization of relations.
Right.
And, of course, his ongoing emphasis on human rights throughout the world. And I can't overlook the fact the repeated warnings he made largely ignored the danger of our dependence on foreign oil. And
yes.
The absolute need to harvest alternative and renewable sources of energy, such as wind, solar, biomass conversion, geothermal, developing ocean technologies, and so forth. And he predicted so much of what's come true.
That's right.
Global warming. It was all tragic, the fact that that oil and gas industry just came unglued and just commercials were almost nonstop.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but good Lord, as I was reading several bios about Omer Raines, okay, just how many presidents have you personally known, Omer?
I believe 7. John Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, of course Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter, George Herbert Walker Bush. That may be 8, but whatever it is, I did not meet George W. Bush, and I've not met Barack Obama personally.
Right. What about leaders of other nations that you perhaps have come in contact with and personally know?
Well, quite a few. Margaret Thatcher, Tony Blair, Prince Charles. Prince Charles is not a leader, but they're in the UK. Francois Mitterrand of France, president. Gerhard Schroeder of Germany, Menachem Begin, Israel, Anwar Sadat of Egypt. Benazir Bhutto of Pakistan. Certainly Nelson Mandela, with whom I have absolute
my hero.
Honor of working.
Yeah, my hero. Okay, believe me. I mean, spend almost 3 decades in prison and get out and become the leader of your nation. Did any of those other leaders strike you particularly great or impressive? And Mandela, I can certainly understand, but why Sadat?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, because the two that probably most stand out, Nelson Mandela and Anwar Sadat. Why Sadat? Sadat, because I think he was prepared to give his life, and he did, if necessary, to achieve a lasting peace with Israel. The time of the Camp David Accords, you may recall the great white tents that were set up on the White House lawn, and for a state dinner. We had equal numbers of Israelis, Egyptians, and Americans at each table. And directly across from me, one of the gentlemen there was the chairman of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, or leader of the Israeli military. Egyptian military. And at one point, he said, and he had this steely look in his eye, he said, my president has signed his death warrant, and he knows it.
Wow.
And, not long thereafter, as history reflects, Sadat was actually assassinated by the military there on the tarmac in Cairo.
Right.
And I thought back on what his friend, who really admired Sadat, had told me, and I thought, my God, he probably did realize the danger he exposed himself to.
Absolutely.
Thought it's so important that he went ahead and did it.
Absolutely.
So that's one reason I've always held him in high esteem. I also had gotten to know him at the Camp David Accords. And he was such an intelligent, courteous man, very thoughtful.
Omer Raines, I've got to share with you right now the most impressive interview that I can remember over the last 35 plus years doing this behind the microphone. Your own legislative accomplishments are absolutely staggering, to put it mildly, but they clearly have a lasting influence on not just California, but the entire nation. So I have a question that I would like you to consider, okay? And you don't have to give me an answer immediately, but we have a time slot, 4:30 next, if you will, next Wednesday, and I would like to continue on this interview of Omer Raines, because there's so much more that the people have no clue. They're about to do a life-size statue. I mean, life-size statue of you. If I'm not mistaken, it's at the mouth of the Ganges. Is that correct?
Yes, very humbly, it is correct.
Wow. Well, see, there's so much more that I want to get into the people, but right now I have well over 29 requests for how they get your book. So let's end today's show with telling our listeners how they can get a hold of your book, Back to the Summit.
Well, the book is in hard copy, paperback, ebook, through Kindle. There's actually an audio book where I do the narration myself, done in a professional studio. As a result, the quality is pretty good.
Wow.
And the best and easiest way is simply to order it from Amazon, or Borders, or elsewhere. But Amazon is the easiest. They'll get it to you quickly. And again, it can be in hardcover, it can be in paperback, it can be an ebook if you do Kindle, or listen to the audio. So it's not difficult to get hold of.
No, it's not difficult to get hold of, and I highly recommend it to our listeners around the world. Back to the Summit by Omer Rains, and I guarantee you I have one on display in one of our lighted cases here at the Reno Town Mall. I want you to take a look at it. Stop by the studio here at the Reno Town Mall. Omer, I'm going to have you look at your schedule real quick, and sometime between now and the next day or two, confirm with me that you'll be able to do a second or third or fourth or follow-up shows. You just have so much to share with our listeners all around the world, and I'd like to say God bless Omer Rains and all he's done for America and for our world. Omer, I want to thank you for being our very special guest on Nevada Matters. Now, listeners, if you missed any portion, tomorrow at 4:30 a.m., you'll be able to hear this entire show in its entirety, and on the East Coast, it will be 7:30 a.m. Omer, I look forward to talking to you soon.